Hey there, welcome back. If you haven't seen part one of the video on relationships, I would watch it for context. So without further ado, just like always, entertainment disclaimer, this is for entertainment purposes only. So let me continue on how I dissected my relationships to be better and do better. After I broke up with the guy with 5 years, I graduated from grad school and then I decided I needed a change in location. We were still communicating and I knew I just needed to cut that off and give closure and move. So I left, told him I was leaving, but didn't tell him where I was going because I needed to put that in the past to move forward. He was still watching the dog, we were still communicating, and I just knew that it was just making it harder on both of us. So I decided and leveraged a job in DC because I wanted to move to DC. So I did it. When I got to DC, like I said in the video about dissecting my sexual journey, I dated a lot. I explored all sorts of relationships, both short-term and long-term, with all sorts of men from all sorts of walks of life. I dated people all colors of the rainbow, dated every race, and experienced men with all sorts of different careers and economic means. I just had fun with exploring what was next for me. I was growing into myself. And now that I was single and not a virgin anymore, I was figuring out the new me. By the way, I wasn't a virgin when I was sleeping with a guy for 5 years. But anyway, listen to the sexuality video. That just sounded weird. One of these experiences, and again, as I'm exploring this, I'm exploring how to do better and be better throughout my relationship journey. I ended up deciding to date 3 people in one day for my entertainment. I don't know if I talked about it in the sexuality video. If I did, excuse the repeat. Long story short, while it was all fun, I would never do it again because it was exhausting. At the end of it, I let the hotel staff, I was living at a hotel for a year at the time on the corporate dime, I let them pick a winner of the 3 and I would go on another date with them. At the time, it never even dawned on me that any of them might not want a second date with me. Man, how my confidence had grown since breaking up with my architect. Anyway, I digress. I ended up turning the selected date, he didn't know about the selection at the time, but he did later and found it funny, into dating the nudist that I talked about in the other video. Well, I talked about the sexual experience in the other video. I'll focus on the relationship and lessons learned in this one. The nudist, he'll laugh when he finds out I'm calling him that for purposes of these videos, was the only one, to the best of my recollection, that I dated twice. I'm someone who, it takes a lot before I leave someone or break up with someone, but once I'm done, I never look back. Except apparently with my nudist. Just like in college, I was transparent with him about dating other people. And a couple months into our relationship, if I'm recalling it right, he sat me down and said to me that I either needed to commit to him and only him, or I could date everyone else. You know, that was a really good lesson because I appreciated his candor and boundaries. And then when I thought about it, if I wanted him out of my life yet, I decided I didn't. And then despite my huge hesitation about committing to anyone at this point, I jumped in and said I would date just him. I think it was about a year or 2 into my time in DC. And so, you know, for a while, I just didn't want to date anybody long term. But I stuck to that when he said that because I always honor my word. We dated the first time for a little over a year, I think. And just like with the others, he's a great guy. He was one of the early employees from a startup that got huge and was pretty well off. He loved adventure and he made me laugh a lot, sometimes despite myself. Being with him taught me a lot. He had ended a marriage a while before, but they were going through a lot of contentious fights over the kids, and candidly, it was just awful. It really brought me back to the fact that I never wanted to be married. Eventually, I met and became close to his kids, and while we took our time introducing them to me, once we broke up, it made me set some boundaries around meeting others' kids. I just decided it wasn't fair to the kids. Until I decided I was serious about someone, I didn't want to meet them. Which their kids were their priority. Don't get me wrong. I love people with kids. But candidly, I just didn't think it was fair to them and candidly fair to me to meet them until I knew I wanted to be with them seriously for a long time. That that story will come up in another story in a minute, which became a problem for me. I also learned that I loved that he was more extroverted than me. I'm super extroverted, but I'm also someone who needs my time alone. And the architect that I dated was not quiet, but he was quiet around new people. And when I dated the nudist, he was super extroverted. It felt really weird when I realized he took a lot of the pressure off of me that I didn't even know I was putting on myself. When he would make niceties with our cab driver, they didn't have Uber or Lyft back then, or a waiter or whatever it was. It made me realize that I'd only dated more introverted people than me. And I really liked the fact that he would take care of some of the little things instead of me having to do it. It was super refreshing. And I learned that that was a good lesson for me. I also learned to lighten up a little bit from him. Because of my family history, we were super uptight about talking about sex. The nudist, as you would imagine, made me lighten up. I mean, the architect did from like a sexual adventures perspective, but not really communicating about it or really communicating it outwardly. So from embarrassing me in stores with sexual comments to actually throwing his work cell phone out the window mid-drive because he was sick of hearing from work, he lived every moment, and he kind of taught me to. He also planted the seeds of not really giving a shit what other people's thought. And if you're not hurting anybody, be you. He was ultimately just him. And while I know now I'm fully embracing that, he truly was a good model for that. And I really took that away from that relationship. And it was a nice revisit when I was looking at the lessons learned from all these relationships that I think I had lost a little bit. While many others in between, another significant learning came from a special ops guy I dated. He was a PJ. He was the quintessential guy's guy. But I come to find out he had a lot of heart and creativity hidden in his core. I picked him up on my birthday one year and was headed out to a party 2 days later with friends to celebrate it at a drag brunch. So me, being me, I had preconceived notions about PJs or special ops guys based on others that I had dated. And I invited this one to my brunch without telling him what it was, to test him. I didn't really say that or think that at the time, but I tested him. Boy, was I wrong. Not only did he come, but he had a fantastic time with it. Flirting back with the performers when they singled him out because, of course, he had the crew cut. He wasn't homophobic at all. He was just an all-around great guy. Someone who is very open to diverse people is important to me. I don't care who you sleep with. I don't care what color you are. And I need my guy to be like that. So instead of being honest about it, back then, I was still testing him. So he passed my test. Again, I wasn't trying to do this on purpose. This is just reflection, right? I realized as I was dissecting this that I had created tests for people subconsciously throughout my whole lifetime without even knowing it. Anyway, I digress. I was hooked and I really liked him. And he was really feeling the same way about me. I loved that he was creative and also physical. I loved that he was intelligent. I loved that he could communicate well. I loved that he was tough. I loved all of it about him. We were pretty inseparable when he wasn't on a mission. And even then, he always found me ways to tell me he was going on a mission and the estimated timeframes without divulging the information because he wasn't supposed to outright. It was like having my own secret agent. I felt loved, protected, and was having great fun with it. About a month into our relationship, he wanted me to meet his daughter. And while I really dug him, I wasn't so sure about it. It became an issue for us. And I was super clear about taking our time with it. As our relationship developed and was feeling more serious about the day, several months into it, and I was really digging him, out of the blue, he showed up on a date with his daughter in the car. He got down on one knee and proposed. I'll be honest with you, he was an amazing man that given more time, it would have probably worked out. But I was so shocked that he had his daughter with him and was down on one knee. I don't honestly remember how I handled it or what I said. I'm sure I didn't handle it with the love and care that I should have. I don't remember the aftermath, but I just know we never recovered from it, despite limping along for a bit of time after that. I had devastated him without meaning to. And I learned a lesson in that aftermath about choosing my words better. I deeply hurt someone I loved by not getting out of my own way. And while I wasn't ready to marry him, he truly was an amazing man. After that catastrophe, I had relationships with several men who were great guys. They were just way too nice for me. And before you come at me, what I mean by that is I had two particularly men that I dated that I really wanted it to work out. The first one was a guy who I was literally with 24/7. He was one of my best friends, and we got along swimmingly. We were together day and night, but we had zero sexual chemistry. We tried. Boy, did we try. But it just wasn't there. And I learned that no matter how much love you have for someone, you can't fake chemistry, period. And it's not shallow. It's just chemistry. And we had so many tough conversations about it. It was sad and happy all at once. We were just so happy to have shared what we did, but sad that we just weren't compatible. So we realized we could remain friends. And then I dated the second nice guy. I actually double dated with the first nice guy with the second nice guy. They both knew. He worked at a bank. He was a regular 9-to-5 guy and couldn't have treated me better. I enjoyed the relationship for a while. I'd been a girl who wanted a white picket fence. I'm sorry. Had I been a girl, I'm not the girl who wants the white picket fence. Had I been a girl who wanted the white picket fence, 2 kids, the family dog, working 9 to 5 every day and taking a 2-week vacation to a Caribbean island once a year, he would have been a dream guy. But honestly, I remember our relationship just bored me, and he deserved someone who adored him. So I broke up with him and was candid about why. When I was looking back on this, I realized that I needed to be raw and authentic with myself. Did I get bored because there was no drama or angst? And I really had to analyze that. And I realized that played a small factor in it, but I also realized I'm just not cut out for normal. Like trains running on time, day in, day out, no matter how good of a guy he was. So another lesson. In the middle of all these relationships, I had 2 friends with benefits situation that kind of ebbed and flowed into my life. Both I addressed quickly in the sex dissection videos, but I'll just address one of them here because the one that was Secret Service was just fun, warm, and a great guy. No real lessons except that he treated me well and always introduced me to his friends and expected them to be respectful as he was with me, and I always appreciated that. And honestly, there's very few times in my life, sans haughty probably, that I've been disrespected. And I don't know that haughty tried to disrespect me. Anyway, I digress. The other friends with benefit situation, however, is someone who will always hold a piece of my heart. Like the guy I spent 5 years with, there's so much that I learned from him. Me talking about their relationship here will never do it justice, but the short version is he may be one of the few people that I learned the most from, and he'll always have a piece of my heart for exactly who he is and for exactly who he's been for me and to me. We've been through so many experiences and years together, both in person and virtually. From his mom walking in on us playing chess and me talking a lot of shit to him. By the way, he's black, and when his mom walked in, I was in a work suit. Not that it matters his race, right? But I was in a suit, and he was wearing dirty clothes, and I was talking hella smack to him. And she literally walked in and took a look at me, turned on her heel, and walked out of his house. I think she still hates me to this day, as I haven't met her again. He was also there in my immature days in DC. I was still dealing with some of my anger from childhood and in my 20s. He saw me jump out of a car one time when some woman came up on me and started running her mouth about white bitches taking all their men and started visibly bucking up to me. He was always my safe space to go when I was devastated by family dynamics and feeling like shit. He was someone who always sensed, weirdly, that I was sad. Now, in retrospect, I know why, right? Soul ties and connections. At the time, I had no idea. And at this time, when I'm dissecting, I still had no idea. He just always sensed when I was sad, and he would call it just the right time to lend me an ear. The nice thing about him was I never pulled any punches. I was exactly who I was, completely honest, completely vulnerable, and I said how I felt to him. And what I realized was he was the only person in my life up to that point, including the guy I spent 5 years with, that I was utterly and completely vulnerable with. I knew he wouldn't judge me. The only thing I wasn't vulnerable about was how I felt about him. We talked for hours about everything except how we felt about each other. And I think that made it more difficult for both of us in retrospect. I also know that things turned out exactly how they should in life. Well, he was not always there for me. Well, he was always there for me, actually. Virtually. It just wasn't the same in person. We would make plans. They would inevitably change. I can't tell me how many conflicts we had about plans. He would be late or not there, and I would just leave and go without him, and then he'd be pissed. Or he'd be pissed because I wouldn't let him buy me expensive stuff. Or we'd get into it because he would go back on his word. The reality is, he was, and still is, my harbor in the storm. But when the waves are crashing all over the top of the boat, he's there for me. But we're two incredibly different people who want different things in lives. And while we were lovers for many years, we're better friends for life. He was meant to have a family with a woman who makes him a way better person. And I was meant for my own journey. But the biggest lesson I took, and still take from him, is never be scared to love. Never take things for granted, and never leave things unsaid that should have been said. It's never wrong to express unconditional love. It's funny. I think we both learned that from each other. Years after we went on our separate journeys, we still have a special relationship. And to this day, it's candid, loving, and incredibly dear to my heart. It's just different. And I think that it's absolutely the best outcome for both of us. I learned that from him. We made it so complicated for both of us. And we only shared all of our feelings so many years later. I'm someone who actually is allowed or has the honor of still being in touch with most of all my exes. In fact, except for the guy probably that I spent 5 years with. I'm not saying I talk with my exes all the time. Oh, and Hottie, don't talk to him. There were so many relationships that I was honored to have over the years before Hottie. You know, you guys already know that story, so I'm not going to review it. As I reflected on the stories that I've shared and the others, that my family has no idea that I was proposed to 3 times, didn't know any about even a third of these guys, or was privy to my humorous failures like dating a guy for 3 months only to figure out solely where his secret workplace was, to where they experimented monkeys so I could free them in a van. By the way, I never did quite find the place, and so I ended that one, and I probably have bad karma to make up for using him to find monkeys. I really never thought through what I was going to do when I got him in the van. But anyway, I digress. As I reflected on these stories and the lessons learned from each, I realized I had grown so much over the years. I was incredibly proud of myself for never settling or agreeing to any of the proposals that I knew in my heart weren't right for me. I was proud that throughout my life and my history, I stuck to wanting someone in my life, but not needing someone in my life, despite what society or my family thought. I also realized that I didn't regret any of the relationships or leaving any of the relationships when the right time came. Each and every one of them taught me something, and I like to hope that I taught them something. Each one evolved me as a person, got rid of another layer of relationship mud or relationship toxicity that I should never be bringing into my lifetime partnership. I also realized, despite my failures and lessons, that somehow I've always lived true to myself and wanting an equal partnership that was filled with unconditional love, best friendship, mutual respect, loyalty, and all the other things that I've always truly wanted. I had to forgive myself for staying in relationships too long, though. I had to give myself grace and understand that I always see the best in people, the potential of their truest heart and soul, their potential, if you will. But I also realized that I needed to grow, that I held on too long because I saw that potential, or didn't value myself enough and sacrificed in relationships to my own detriment. I realized that I can't fix anyone, no matter how much love I have for them. They have to fix themselves. And I had to meet them exactly where they are not where they can go, and prioritize myself too. I'm lucky enough to still be friends with a lot of these guys, and those relationships continue to evolve. I realized that only when I could value myself as much as I was valuing other people would I get the same in return. You teach people how to treat you. And that's another lesson in the ever-evolving story of my relationships. And while I had to break my heart numerous times throughout this journey, I'm a way better person because of it. And when I choose to engage in the next relationship post-Hadi and all of my healing, it will be even better for it. Well, there's a lot of details in this video. Each relationship and each dissection brings its own learning and lessons. And I know your relationships haven't been the same as mine, but everyone has a variety of experiences that they can learn from. Hopefully by sharing my story and learnings, there's so many more, by the way, that I dissected, but this is long enough as it is. Hopefully you'll do your own dissection and you'll give yourself grace and you'll be able to dissect your own story and own journey and appreciate every single one for the learning. Honestly, I wouldn't be who I am without all of the experiences. And if I'm even better and even more healed in relationships, isn't it more beautiful? And wouldn't it be beautiful if the world was filled with healthy, loving, thriving relationships? I hope you find that too. Until next time, enjoy your week.